Welcome to episode 215 of the XS Noize Podcast, where we focus on in-depth interviews with musicians, artists, and people involved in the music industry. I'm your host, Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I meet Andy Burrows from Razorlight to discuss their new album, Planet Nowhere, and new documentary, Fall to Pieces. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Finn Andrews from The Vales. So check it out, and if you like the podcast and would like to support it, help us out by subscribing for free on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Razorlight led the indie rock resurgence of the early 2000s, delivering hits like Golden Touch, Somewhere Else, and America. With 3 top 5 albums, an NME Award, and major festival headline slots, they left a lasting mark. After reuniting in 2021, the classic lineup returned with Planet Nowhere, their first album together since 2008. In this episode, drummer Andy Burrows talks about the reunion, the new album, the Fall to Pieces documentary, upcoming shows, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Andy Burrows from Razorlight. So, hi Andy, welcome back to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you back. So,
Cheers.
After reuniting for live shows in 2021 with the classic Razorlight lineup, the band have released a new album at the end of last year, Planet Nowhere, and recently Razorlight Fall to Pieces documentary. Let's start with the documentary, Fall to Pieces. It's directed by Ben Lowe. So how did it come about? Did Ben approach you or did you approach him?
Personally, Ben approached me. I'm not sure how it worked with Johnny and the sort of beginnings of it. But for me, Ben approached me and, I really didn't believe at that point that there would be any mileage in the idea of Johnny and I talking. So, I was really grateful to Ben because he really sort of persevered, and that seemed to be his goal. His goal didn't seem to be like trying to get the band back together. His goal seemed to be Johnny and me talking, and he absolutely managed to orchestrate that and make it happen. So I'm eternally grateful to Ben on many levels.
Yeah, it was really, really fantastic documentary. What was it like having the cameras document such a personal journey? Because I really felt for you when you're in the car in France and you're driving to meet Johnny for the first time after all these years. You seem very nervous. So how did you really feel?
Exactly as it looked. I think very nervous. I think there was no other option, and that was very apparent to me. I can only gauge that the way that Johnny felt secure in meeting up with me was by there being other people around and it being sort of structured, and I guess some sort of security in there being like another power around it, i.e. the documentary. So there wasn't really any other option available to me in terms of, because I'd been reaching out to him for quite a long time. I've written to him a lot and never got anything back. And so when Ben suggested it, I obviously I was like, well, this isn't gonna happen. I can't see any reason why, just because you're making a film, Johnny's gonna suddenly speak to me now. But somehow Ben managed to arrange something that worked. And obviously I was very nervous because when you haven't seen somebody for 12 years that you used to know very, very well, we used to live in each other's pockets. It was nerve-wracking, really nerve-wracking. And there was something very, very special about it, but also something very surreal about it. It was it was a mighty strange thing to do.
And when you get there and you're in the studio and you're sitting at the drum kit and you're hitting the drums and you seemed more relaxed then. How did that feel?
Yeah, that felt great. I think having the instruments there was very disarming. I think it was very important that we were able to have, 5-10 minutes of pissing about like kids on instruments. That was really important. I think it's like, it's like when you don't know what to talk about, it's good to play a game of cards or something. There was something very important about being able to connect via the medium of music and playing together, even if it was just for 10-15 minutes. So, but it was really special, it was very nerve-wracking. It was slightly awkward. It was also COVID. So it meant that we couldn't give each other a hug, and whether or not we would have given each other a hug, who knows? But I'm quite huggy, so I would have probably tried to hug him, whatever. But the whole thing was quite, yeah. I mean, that was an odd time for everybody. You know what I mean? Like the middle of sort of, it was the kind of loose lockdown time. You could get on a plane, you could go and meet people, but you had to wear a mask, and so it sort of added to the, previous drama of Razorlight plus this strange new world of COVID. And yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it wasn't the most ideal scenario, but now that I look back on it, it being 3 years ago, or whatever, or 4 years ago, maybe it was the only way. Maybe life had gotten weird enough that it meant that we that maybe it was comforting to do it in some way, shape, or form.
How did it feel to watch the documentary and relive those moments? Were there any scenes that hit you differently than you expected?
Well, I can't really, I can't say I've watched it in a while now because, it meant a lot to me for a period of time. And I think now we've been, playing live together for a while, and we have made a record. So we've been through a fair little bit more. I mean, the weird thing about it is that we've probably been back together now almost as long as we were together in our heyday. But obviously back then, because we were with each other every single day and it was absolutely mental, it's probably not quite seemed like the same time frame. But I think that the whole thing has been, a real journey of, on a sort of humanic level. It's been a very, poignant thing that's happened, for 4 grown men. I mean, bands are funny. Bands are weird, like they're like family, and everybody always says, "Oh, you can't choose your family." But the funny thing about bands is you there is an element of choice. You don't have to be in a band, but it does feel like family. It feels like you kind of love each other. You defend each other to the hilt. But at the same time, there are many instances where being together is tricky. But for some reason, the thing that you do together, is special and obviously in our situation, we're very fortunate in that we had a band that had some songs that really resonated with people, and we had a whole phase of time that was, sort of quite important in terms of British musical. I mean, history is too big a word, but do you know what I mean? Like it was an important time. It was an important time, and the further away we get from that time, the more you realise just how brilliant and magical it was. And we haven't really had anything. I mean, there's been plenty of brilliant music since then, but I don't think there's really been a scene like it since then.
No,
I don't know if you'd agree with me on that, but it doesn't feel like there has to me.
No, certainly.
On a bandy level.
Not in the. I mean, I suppose. Well, and saying that now, there's a lot of great bands coming through at the moment. You have like Fontaine's DC.
Yeah, that's why I did that. I mean, Fontaine's has been a massive exception to the, to the sentence that I just uttered. I didn't mean to say that there aren't great bands around. There's some fantastic bands around, and there's some brilliant music. And also, even when I think about like Chapel Roan and that Lola Young album that's just come out, like there is a lot of really quite special music happening. Fontaine's DC are a marvelous band, by the way. So I wasn't suggesting for one second that there aren't great bands, but I mean, in terms of a scene, I don't think we have experienced something like what was going on between 2001 and 2007, 8 since. And I don't know. Yeah, that's just the way I feel. I might just be saying that, might just sound old, which is also I'm totally happy to accept. But I have kept an ear to the ground, and I have been watching, like we all have, and I haven't felt there'd be something as exciting collectively for a while.
No, I agree. No, you're right.
That's all I meant. I didn't mean that there isn't lots of great things happening.
So late last year, the band released Planet Nowhere, Razorlight's first album in 16 years. So how did it feel to finally make a full-length record together again?
I think it feels amazing. You know, I think that it may be the start. I think probably the most significant thing about it is it's probably the start of us being able to make albums together again. And I think that what became quite clear when we made it is that it was our way back in. I think maybe we all thought at the start that we should make and produce a hit record and try and like emulate or repeat some of the success that we had 15 years previous. But I think that now we've got past it, now we're a couple of months into its release, I'm like, actually, the significance of that record for me, and maybe for us as a band, is actually just more important to us as a band, important to us as having done something together, understanding each other, trusting each other, and being ready to go forward. And now that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, the idea that this band, you know, has a future. That's what's exciting to me about having made Planet Nowhere. I think it's a wonderful record. I'm a big fan of it, but I think that what's quite nice about it is it's quite honest. It's where we were at last year, and it is the opening of a door to us making more records together. That's how I feel about it.
Well, you co-wrote the first track, Zombie Love, with Johnny. So how did you and Johnny balance each other's ideas this time compared to the past?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've been slightly less gung ho with my involvement because our debut album, Up All Night, was a big indie hit, and then we went into the second record and we really went for it, and it ended up being, it ended up kind of working out. And then our third album we wrote together a lot, and that was a real joy, but it was a different experience. It was a different style of album, and I think the music world was changing, and I think perhaps I don't know what the appetite at that point was for guitar bands. 2009 was not quite so guitar-y as 2004, 5, 6, 7. And so we were going on our own sort of journey. And then and in the years that passed, as we were just talking about, it wasn't quite so bandy. So coming back into this has been about trying to find a place. And there's an element of wanting to kind of revisit old Razorlight and be what we were, but there's also an element of like wanting to move forward. So I think making this new album and writing together has been a bit more of a delicate, perhaps like a sort of a softer walk for me anyway. I don't know about Johnny. I think Johnny has been just writing and writing and writing, and he is the driving force of Razorlight. And I think that my feeling personally was that I didn't want to stifle him by trying to be too involved, which I think probably has worked out in some way. And I think in other ways, maybe it would be better if we were writing more together. I think what I'm trying to say is I've tried to, not be overbearing in my want to be involved in the writing. I think I'm just a bit more, I love playing the drums in this band. It's kind of like my dream band to play the drums in. And maybe there's been a part of me this time round that's been like, look, I'm happy on the drums. And if we get to write some songs together, that's brilliant. But I don't want to make you feel like I need to be writing. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's quite natural and organic, and occasionally we write together and it's wonderful. But I also love it when Johnny does his thing, when Johnny comes into the room with a song and presents us with something that we're all excited about. That's the Johnny that I like. That's the Johnny I get really excited about. He doesn't have to have me with him writing. We've had success with it in the past, but I feel like I would rather he was happy in himself and with what he's bringing into the band.
And the album was recorded with the legendary producer Youth at his Space Mountain studio in Spain. Now, legendary producer, he just seems to be constantly producing and putting out records. What did he bring to these sessions?
I mean, I think he brought an awful lot. I think he was also instrumental in sort of bringing us together and bringing a sense of positivity. And I think his general character is very up. He's pretty laid back, and I think he was massively important to us making a record together. So I think really his input was most significant in that it made it happen, and it made it happen in a positive way, and it made it feel fun. Really, I think is one of the things that I took away from it. It was really fun working with him. Often working with producers and working with people, and there being clashes and stuff can be quite stressful. I feel like Youth had a very breezy, and when I say breezy, I don't mean that he wasn't putting his everything into it, but I just mean that his natural air is quite it's quite laid back. It's quite refreshing. I loved working with him, and I think that he was wonderful in terms of making us all feel comfortable in the studio and bringing the best out of us.
Were there any challenges, trying to recapture the Razorlight sound after so many years?
No, I don't think so, because I think one of the greatest things about any great band is that, especially when it's the band that have been the band for as long as they might have been over a period of time of putting out records that people know, is that that's how you sound. And I think that's it's actually quite easy to sound like the band you are, as long as you're all playing, the instrument that you play in the way that you played it and giving it, your heart and soul. It will sound like you. And collectively, I think that's what happens with Razorlight. Like when the four of us get together, it sounds like us. I don't know if we even understood that before until we started playing together again, a couple of years ago. We sound like us, and I feel like we're very lucky to have that. When the four of us are in a room, well, irrespective of whether or not you like Razorlight, we sound like Razorlight, and I think that's really quite a lovely and special thing for us.
And you worked on other projects outside of Razorlight when the band wasn't together, including the Smith and Burrows project, which I spoke to you about before in the past. So how did those experiences shape your return to the band?
I think probably it was really important to work with other people and learn about trying to be as considerate as possible and as open as possible, and my understanding of the creative process with other people was probably very helpful in terms of understanding what had gone before. I think it's just always very I count myself very lucky to have been able to work with lots of people, because I think it's an amazingly enlightening thing to work with different writers, different creative people, and learn about how they work. And sometimes that might have some influence on you, or it may teach you how you do or don't want to do things. Uh, Generally opening your eyes to the collaborative process, I think. So I feel very grateful to have, that when I left Razorlight, I kind of made a promise to myself that if I was going to leave something that wonderful, that busy, that I needed to make sure that I was doing as many things as possible. Otherwise, what was the point in leaving? I would have rather have not left, but clearly that's how I felt at the time, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I felt like I just wanted to go off and learn as much as possible. So yeah, I just think working with everybody that I've worked with in the meantime has just been the most incredible learning curve, of which I'm so very grateful to have experienced,
Yeah, you left after the Slipway Fires album, and Johnny went on to record Olympus Sleeping. So how did you feel about that? And did you keep an interest in the band from a distance?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, of course. I would never pretend that I didn't stay very interested, really. I mean, I think I remember hearing the new record, thinking it was really good, thinking that Johnny was on his sort of top game. That song "Carry Yourself" I thought was great, and there was "Burn Camden Burn." I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, I definitely kept an eye on everything that he was doing, and I really enjoyed it all. I think that probably the only thing I would have ever have said that was of an interest is that it never sounded like the four of us. But that's
Yeah.
great, because that means that when it was the four of us, it was instant. But I think he did a lot of great stuff in the interim period, and he kept on flying the Razorlight flag, and good for him. I genuinely think Johnny's one of the greatest frontmen that's come out of this country. I've always thought he's a real deal. Despite some of our sort of apparent differences, I've always thought that Johnny is just a superb singer, songwriter, frontman of a band. I still watch him now from the drum kit and just think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. And since the band reunited, you've had a sold out headline tour. You're going on more shows. You're toured it this year. Were there any moments on the tour that reminded you why you love being in Razorlight?
Oh, every night, every single night reminds me of why I love being in Razorlight. There are many things about being in Razorlight that are difficult. Bands are prickly monsters, you know. They're difficult. They are full of little intricacies and you know, the personal relationships can be strained and pushed to their limits and stuff. But every night when we play live together is, I don't even need a reminder, you know. I never, even in the years when we weren't together, I used to think about it all the time. Think about how much I used to enjoy playing the drums in that band, you know. So it feels a bit like a sort of a second round dream when I get to play these songs live. And I'm not going to lie and pretend and sugarcoat it and say that it's always, you know, blissfully easy, sorry, to be in a band of any sort, or this band in particular. But Razorlight is like hugely special to me. You know, my little corner of the world completely changed when I joined this band, and so I owe a lot to it. And playing the drums on stage with Razorlight, I think is one of my favorite things. I feel so lucky to have ever experienced it in the first place, and I still feel that way when we get on stage now.
If people want to understand the music of Razorlight, what are the 5 songs they should listen to?
Vice has always been one of my favorites. I think that song is wicked. I love playing it live. Golden Touch, you've got to listen to because I just think that's a phenomenal pop song. I think that's Johnny Burrell at his, you know, peak youth songwriting. Golden Touch is an iconic song. Somewhere Else is important, I think, because it was mine and Johnny's first sort of collaborative effort. Not on a songwriting level. I didn't write it with him, but we kind of made the song together. And it was a big hit for us. I know it's cheesy and obvious to say, but I think America is important because it's kind of what took us a bit sort of interstellar for a period. How many songs is that? Have I said? I've said 3 or 4.
4. I think. Vice, Somewhere
4.
Else, America,
And Golden Touch.
Golden Touch. Yeah, one more.
It's tricky because I think Razorlight. It's tricky because obviously this is coming from my perspective, whereas I know that obviously that Up All Night album was, you know, it was such an incredible bit of writing from Johnny and the band as well, and Christian's drumming, you know, so good on that record and so inventive. So I love things like To the Sea, and I love Fall Fall Fall. I am a real fan of our third album because I think we were on a real journey, and had we have continued, I think we were going somewhere very special. I love Wire to Wire. I
That
think I'd probably,
is amazing.
yeah. I think I'd probably say Vice, Golden Touch, somewhere. I mean, it's really tricky. Vice, Golden Touch, Somewhere Else, America, and Wire to Wire. What's that? 5? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably. I don't think the others would necessarily agree, but I think for me, those 5. Yeah, I think for me, those 5 are key. I love this chat, by the way. But
No, I
if it's any
appreciate it.
consolation, I could carry on chatting to you for another 3 hours.
I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. I think a period. I don't know if I've kind of got your question right, but I think an album that I will love for the rest of my life because it was a big year for me in terms of my personal life and also Razorlight, and also I just think it's one of the most wonderful albums is the Guillemots, Through the Window Pane. Yeah, they had a song on there called Trains to Brazil, which I think was that was their biggest song. That album for me was just like everything about that era, and only in my little private side of things, it meant everything. I used to listen to it on the tour bus. I think it got nominated for a Mercury Prize, but anyway, the Guillemots, Through the Window Pane. I mean, of all time.
No, it's just what album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
I mean, it's got to be it's probably, for me, it's probably going to be like Blur, Modern Life is Rubbish.
Really?
You know, yeah, because I was 13 and I was skipping over from like the Beatles and Michael Jackson into indie music and what I ended up just falling in love with for the rest of the time, and bands and everything. And I remember watching that documentary, Modern Life is Rubbish, when I was 13, and just thinking like it looked like the best thing you could possibly do with your life if you were lucky enough to get anywhere close. And I know that they weren't at a period of their career where they were particularly smashing it. I mean, they were having a good time for sure. But, it wasn't Part Life. It wasn't Song 2. It was before all of that. It was so raw and amazing. And every single song on Modern Life is Rubbish is just, I mean, like Villa Rosie, Blue Jeans, Star-Shaped. Oh my God. I mean, what an album. Pop Scene. I remember hearing that when I was a young teenager and just being like, this has changed my world. Thinking like they were the greatest pop group in the world. In the world, I still think they were and are. And I love that film they just did recently. I always remember saying to our A&R guy every time we had like success or when we got nominated for some Brit Awards, I would always be like, "Are we anywhere near Blur yet?" And he'd be like, "You're a B. I don't think you've got to Blur yet, but you might be a B." And I was like, "Oh man."
Well, I still played her first album, Leisure.
Oh, Leisure! I mean, what a record! I mean, I'm probably like yourself. I'm a huge Blur fan, so I'm a nerd about every album. But Modern Life, in terms of your question and the memories, Modern Life is Rubbish, and then the other one for me would be A Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads.
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would it be?
Wow, that's an amazing question. What, just to experience it again?
Or change it?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to change it. I think because my daughter is so excited about it, she's 16, she'll be 17 when she goes to Reading Festival this year. I think I was always pretty blown away by the fact that we headlined Reading Festival, because I went there as a teenager, obviously. And I always dreamed about playing there, but I only really dreamed about playing there in the tent in the afternoon. Do you know what I mean? That was my dream. My dream level was like, wouldn't it just be great to be somewhere on that poster? So the fact that we headlined it has always sort of blown my mind. And I know there are many bands who've headlined it endless times. In fact, very good friends of mine have headlined it many times. But most people don't get to do anything like that. Most people aren't even lucky enough to get anywhere near a festival. So I know that I feel very grateful. I think headlining Reading, I'd love to do it again, and I'd love for her to be there.
Brilliant.
As opposed to her going this year and just telling me what the lineup is and me just not really knowing who anyone is.
So Andy, that's me done. So the band are going on tour. Is it April?
Yep, in April. Yep. And we're going to play the new album and some old stuff, and yeah, it's going to be great.
And what's beyond that?
Then we're going to get back in the studio next month and record some new songs. We've got a summer full of festival shows, and hopefully we're going to Europe in the autumn. I'm going to be playing a little bit with Katie Tunstall. I'm off to Australia with Katie in May and doing some of her Eye to the Telescope anniversary stuff, but mostly Razorlight, new album, a tour in April, festivals, and a European tour in the autumn. So we're very much looking forward to all of that.
Brilliant. Well, Andy, thanks very much. I'm going to let you go to watch EastEnders. I hope you really enjoy it.
And can I also just say I'm really sorry that I was late, and I love talking to you, and I fully remember talking to you when we did Smith and Burrows, any time you either want to do some more of this or talk again, I would be so up for it, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and hopefully we'll talk about the next album. Maybe I know you and Johnny. Get you and Johnny on. I know Johnny doesn't do.
No, we'll do it together. I'll make sure to tell him what great fun it is chatting to you. So I'm sure we'll do it together next time.
Thank you, very very much appreciated.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay, mate. Enjoy your night.
Cheers. See you later.